أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Distinguished panelists, my respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you all to this auspicious event by the name of Sent as Received, which is organized by the Development Society. We live in a world in which information has taken over. Literally, we live in an era which is known as the infodemic. Literally, before we used to sleep and wake up to alarms. Now, in the day of, in this world in which we live in, we wake up to ting, 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 the WhatsApp. And we wake up with that, we sleep with that. That is the type of world we live in. And alhamdulillah, we have been blessed with such good panelists today who will help us, inshallah, know and how to overcome this problem. But before we start any event, it is an amazing gesture to start with the verses of the Holy Quran, and I would like to welcome Brother Ali Muntazir Sikilada.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين يغضون أصواتهم عند رسول الله أولئك الذين امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى لهم مغفرة وأجر عظيم إن الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات أكثرهم لا يعقلون ولو أنهم صبروا حتى تخرج إليهم لكان خيرا لهم والله غفور رحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surely those who lower their voices before Allah's apostle are they whose hearts Allah has proved for guarding against evil. They shall have forgiveness and a great reward. As for those who call out to you from behind the private chambers, surely most of them do not understand. And if they wait patiently until you come out to them, it will certainly be better for them, and Allah is forgiving, all merciful. O you who believe, if an evildoer comes to you with a report, look carefully into it, lest you harm a people in ignorance, then be sorry for what you have done. Surah Hujurat, ayat number 3 to 6. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ahsant, Jazakallah, Brother Ali. Now we'll move on to the main event. I would like to introduce our panelists for today. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed with 3 panelists and from all different fields. So we have Sheikh Kamran from the spiritual field. We have Brother Shani Abbas from the medical field and Brother Haseen from the psychological field. Bismillah. And I would also like to hand over to Brother Murtada Rashid to take over as the panelist for today. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Can you all hear me please? Can you all hear me? Okay, so first of all I would like to welcome you all. Thank you so much for taking out this time. And before we start, could I please request the gents to please fill up the first 2 lines so that the ladies could come forward as well, so we can have a panelist discussion, number 1. Number 2, we are extremely sorry for the late that happened unexpectedly. And third and foremost is it's a discussion, so if you're having any questions, if you would like to ask anything, we've got volunteers around with papers and pens, so feel free to take 1 sheet, write your question, and it will be forwarded in front to us, and that's how the system would be for tonight. So first of all, Brother Haseen, thank you so much for taking out this time. And you know, we live in an age where, as the speaker said, that it's an infodemic. It's like a pandemic of information. We don't know what's happening, what's actually going through, and we are in such a situation. We are in such a situation where there are some social and some geopolitical factors that come in. We are having some information failures. Some posts come out that we don't know what are its origin. How do those posts actually cause problems? How do those actions actually, how do we actually have these posts affecting us? And what is your take on the sent as received theme? With that, I'd like to welcome you up on this podium. Thank you so much.
أعوذ بالله من أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullah. Before I start, while I was sitting there and the topic was being introduced, I remember coming across a story some years ago. I don't remember whether it was in a book or it was narrated by somebody in one of such sessions. And the story was such that there was a lady, a young woman who was newly married. When she went to the kitchen to cook fish, she took the fish, a small fish, to fry. And before she started frying it, she cut off the head and the tail, and then she fried what remained in the frying pan. So it was a bit of a weird thing for the husband to see. And so he asked her, why did you cut off the head and the tail? Because normally, changu, you fry it fully. So she said, no, this is how my mother used to do it. And I said, okay, there must be a reason. So the next time they visited her mother, they asked her that, the husband remembered, and he said, why did you used to cut the head and the tail of the fish? And the mother said, oh, that's how my mother used to do it. And luckily the grandmother was alive. So they asked her, Nanima, what was the reason why you used to do it? And she said, during those days we were so poor that our frying pans were very small, so the fish would not fit. So we would have to cut off the pieces so that it can fit and fry properly. But you don't need to do it anymore, you have bigger frying pans now. So this is one of such things that happen in society. However, there are much more serious things that happen, and that's my job here today. So my colleagues will take you through some detailed incidences and how to prevent yourself from becoming a victim. But I'm going to talk about the geopolitical, global, social aspect. If I can please have the presentation on screen. Sentence received. For ease of understanding, I've classified it into 3 types: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And I wish this was fake news, but it's not. It's real. These things exist. The actual misinformation and disinformation and malinformation, people talk about it, it's real. It's not fake news. Quick definitions before we move on. Fake news is any information that is misleading or totally false. It's presented as true. It's presented as news. Misinformation is the false information, but the intention is not necessarily evil or intentional. Disinformation, there is a harmful intent. Somebody wants to achieve something, whether it is money, power, influence, or just to hurt people. Okay? Malinformation is sometimes genuine information is used, twisted a bit here and there, to cause harm. You see a lot of that happening in the religious sense. For example, there are some extreme sects who would bring up a valid hadith and then present it in a way that it can be. So while we are going through this, I'm sure all of you, in your mind, you can already think of things that can be classified as misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Okay, great. How many have received this forward on WhatsApp? So this is this presentation today. It's not fake news. It's real. These were the definitions. Okay. How many have received this forwards on your WhatsApp? With that message, in Cylinder Bridge? Yeah? Was that the message you got? And do you know if it was Cylinder Bridge? Do you know if it was? Can we try playing it? Pretty scary. I'm sure if we used to pass by Cylinder Bridge after receiving this, we would be really worried. Yeah? In reality though, it was not Cylinder Bridge. It was another country. It was actually in Botswana. And so you can imagine the fear that families, got into when they knew their loved one would pass by that road every day. And maybe some of them still don't know that this was not Cylinder Bridge, right? Because that video is spread faster than the correction. The correction nobody shares, right? Okay? So this is just a social idea. My colleagues will explore more of it. But this is how it can spread fear. Maybe this was intentional, maybe it was not, I don't know. But you can imagine the effect. I'll give you another example that happened on a global scale. In 2017, there was a terrorist attack in Paris, and there were news media that posted videos on Facebook and on YouTube that were showing Muslims celebrating the victory in relation to that attack. Only much later was it clarified that that video was of Muslims in another part of UK celebrating a win of the Pakistan cricket team. That was posted with the heading that they are celebrating the terrorist attack that happened. This was definitely ill-intentioned. It was definitely promoted by right-wing groups to try and sway the public opinion. And it worked, you know, a lot of people bought into it. Maybe some people still think it was Muslims celebrating, right? Only those who read between the lines and research more would know. So if you are not a Muslim, you would say, you see Muslims are like this. And this happens quite often. I've just nitpicked, but it's quite often. A recent case, General Qasim Soleimani, right? We all know of the fact that he was a great person, a pious person, a hero, because we are blessed to have that sort of community and information that we can filter the news. But believe you me when I tell you, when you go to the West among non-Muslims and non-Shias, this is how he is presented. His picture is next to Osama bin Laden. And he is the biggest purveyor of terrorism. He is responsible for the largest number of American deaths after Osama. And this is how news portray him. And when supporters and those who know the truth try fighting it by using social media, guess what happens? Social media censorship. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube deleted hundreds of thousands of accounts that would post positive things about Qasim Soleimani. I know a few people in Dar es Salaam whose accounts were deleted by social media. Deleted, like gone. All their posts, all their writings gone. Yeah, just because they posted something about General Qasim Soleimani. Okay. So this is a very complex kind of war. Truth for those who are not on haqq is very subjective. What benefits them? So for us it's even more difficult, because if you go to a university which is talking about academic fake news, then they are just talking about what is in line with them. But when we come to us, we have to look at what is haqq and what is not. Even if it's detrimental, even if it's not beneficial, haqq has to be talked about. So in this scenario, this was not fake news. This was the truth about General Qasim Soleimani. But according to the Western sanctions, this was fake news. He's a terrorist. So you see perspectives? "9/11", I mean, 20 years ago it happened. Iraqis are still suffering. The world is still suffering. If you look at Information Clearing House, the number of Iraqis that have died since then is over 1.4 million. And all because of disinformation, weapons of mass destruction that were never there, right? The war was propagated, the war was started. And they have also started agreeing, Western media has started admitting to it, but now they are making up reasons on why it happened. But the damage is done. So this information, specifically created for a purpose or purposes for their benefit, was used to start a war that the world is still suffering from, will continue suffering for the next 100 years. You know, let alone the Iraqis who have lost their lives, the troops that have lost their lives innocently, you know, the babies and the children, and the financial effect which will last. And this is all done with disinformation. Dossiers are produced, news media catches it on, runs the narrative, You know, all the top media houses in the world talk about weapons of mass destruction, and it's all over the place. Everyone is talking about it. You know, even if it's false, it's believed to be true. This is how it works. It's a very well-oiled machinery. So you have to be very good in staying away from it and not being affected. Just to give you an idea, since 9/11, when Facebook didn't exist, social media has taken over the news market. Okay, so currently, if you look at the US, as per a study done in 2017, one of the major news sources for US citizens is social media. News organizations are still major. So imagine things like Fox News and Facebook are your sources. Can you imagine the chaos it can cause? And look at the second chart. This is the same study that was looking at fake news and how it is distributed in the US. Of course, their motivation was to look at the election issue, not the other geopolitical issue. But they did the study, and you can see social has the biggest far-reaching consequences as far as distribution is concerned. So when you're on Facebook, when you're on Instagram, Facebook mostly, you are consuming information, and it is changing. You know, psychology is very interesting. You are reading something, it affects you. You read it from 2 different sources, it affects you more. You read it from 5 different sources, you keep reading it every day, you keep seeing similar articles and headlines every day, it starts changing your psyche. Okay? So this is what they do. Social media is filled with information, and we are consumers. So you can just imagine how massively chaotic it can get, how big of a weapon this is. In fact, analysts have called it weapons of mass destruction in itself, because it spreads disinformation. So weapons of mass disinformation. I'll give you a local perspective, and this is more of a historical perspective. I just want to touch on it so we can be a bit critical. This is a picture of Mount Kilimanjaro. Who was the first person to summit Mount Kilimanjaro? How many of us know? In fact, you can even check on your phone. What is the answer that you get? Who's the first person to summit Mount Kilimanjaro? Does anybody know by maybe studied in school, history? Okay, anybody checking? Yeah? Okay. Tell me what you get. Hans Mayer. Okay. So Hans Mayer was a German explorer who climbed Kilimanjaro in 1889, as per what you would have gotten. But do you know that's not entirely the truth? Because Hans Mayer was led to the peak by a local guide. And the local guide was Yohani Lau, an 18-year-old Jaga, who was the first person to step on the peak. And then Mayer followed. So technically, it was Yohani Lau who was the first person to summit Kilimanjaro. Not Hans Mayer. But you will not find this in textbooks. Yes. Edmund Hillary, that was Mount Everest, I think. Yeah? Okay. So Hans Mayer may have started the expedition and the resources and supplied it, but without the guides, they wouldn't have summited. But this is very conveniently left out of history. So whoever writes history controls what history says. So we all, when we search, when we look, when we read textbooks, it was Hans Mayer who was the first person to summit Kilimanjaro. It was Columbus who found the Americas. Right? And we consume this information everywhere. We don't question it. But there is a reason why this is done. There is power, there is control, there is white supremacy. There are many reasons for this that can be there. And it's a vast discussion. But if you go back in history, this is not new. So if you go back to the time of Muawiyah in Sham, he had media that was trying to build a certain picture of Imam Ali alayhi salam. It was distorting information. It was providing disinformation. And it was cleverly sometimes manipulating truth with falsehood, so that people would hate Imam Ali alayhi salam. It was happening then. It was happening during the time of the Prophet, which I'm sure the respected Sheikh will talk about next. But this is not new. This has been happening since age old. We need to be more aware of such things. So for instance, I'm just giving you tidbits. Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia, if you go to the British media, he's considered a hero till now, because he's the reason the West have control over the Middle East. But was he really a hero, or was he a terrorist? He's the reason the Middle East broke down. Right? But he's hailed as a hero in history books. So if you are studying in a British school or using a British curriculum in history, you study him as a hero. Okay? There is good news though. What do we do about it? How do we protect ourselves? So the Quran says, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. The truth has come and falsehood has vanished. إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Falsehood is of that kind that is always vanishing. So the only thing we need to do to fight it is be more aware about the truth. How do we do that? Don't rely on mainstream sources. Don't rely on the mainstream narrative. Read it, understand it, but look towards the other side. I've given you some basic reading material on the screen, which can be your starting source of information that you will not find on CNN, on Fox News, on Blockbuster, Novel.
Thank you so much, Brother Hassan, for that enlightenment. Just to resonate with you, I believe that the fish example that you gave, it's such that of the Chinese whispers, where you start with a word or a sentence, and by the time you're ending up with completely different things. So just to know, like, how many of you have tried Chinese whispers from before, with a raise of hands? Well, those who haven't, it's definitely something to look up, and it's a lot to learn from it. Just to add on to your Instagram, taking some accounts down, there was only one incident which this helped, was when Trump got vanished from the social media. And talking about social media, we cannot forget about social distancing. And since we're talking about social distancing, I remember a message that came out that Madagascar has found a drink that kills corona. So technically, if we talk about it, why are we taking vaccines? So with that, I would request Dr. Shanebas to come forward and present his view on the medical aspect. Thank you so much. Kareem Hassan.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you Brother Hassan for the beautiful introduction to today's evening.
before the pandemic hit. And what they did was they took information that is circulated in Twitter, and they took years from 2006 all the way till 2017. And what they did was they compared the speed of circulation of the correct information, and they compared it with the speed of circulation of incorrect information. And what they actually found was that misinformation actually spread 70% faster than the correct information. And this was, remember, long before Corona. So when Corona hit and there's all that information out there, you can only imagine how much this must have amplified. Right? So for today, we'll be going through a couple of things. And first, I want to show you the power of misinformation. So we'll start by discussing what is R0. I'm sure all of you must be aware of what R0 is. With Corona and with infectious diseases, we discuss about a term that is called R0. So R0 is the average, when we talk about diseases, the first case that you get, we see how much one case gives rise to other cases. So the average number of cases that come up from a single case of infected person. So the power of misinformation can be gauged with something like this. We have a few examples over there. Measles, which is one of the most infectious diseases out there, has an R0 of 12 to 18, meaning one case of measles on average will give rise to 12 other people who will get measles. Chickenpox is also very highly infectious, and you'll get around 10 people who will be infected from every one case of chickenpox, which is why we get so many spreads and outbreaks when chickenpox does come out. COVID-19, while we think it's the biggest pandemic that hit, the R0 of that is just between 2.4 and 3.4. Now we talk about misinformation. Think about one person who sends one wrong forward to a group of 255. That's an instant spread of misinformation to 255 people. That is way, way more than the highest, most infectious disease that we have up there. So you can see how powerful misinformation is. So we have to be very careful, otherwise the potential to spread misinformation is very high with this. Next, we'll think of why. Why would somebody actually spread misinformation out there, right? Aren't people inherently bent to spread the right information? Now, people have all sorts of malicious intents, right? And some people may not even have the malicious intents, and they're just confused. But some of the reasons why we see, some of the motives why we see people spread misinformation could be to spread confusion, right? There could also be some financial gains. When you tell somebody that, okay, this is not the correct treatment, instead you do this treatment, there are definitely financial gains linked to that. There could be some political motives, with which we can see during even the COVID time, some of the countries, they fail to recognize COVID as a disease to begin with. So there are also political motives over here. And what is the impact that this misinformation creates? So there's a lot of impact when this misinformation spreads. We can see things like confusion, right? It makes people confused and they're in a limbo. They cannot decide what is the right choice for them. Medically, they don't know, should I take this drug A or should I just leave everything and go for a herbal alternative? At times, you get the wrong treatment prevailing. And we have our own local example. The Babua Loliondo, who just recently passed away, we can see how many people left conventional medical treatment and went for alternative treatment. And in that, there are many, many people who lost their lives. It's not covered, but there's lots of people who lost their lives just because they followed the treatment of Loliondo. There's also the impact of increased anxiety and increased mental health illnesses out there. When misinformation spreads, this is another impact that is out there. It also prolongs the pandemic. When you get people who spread things like, okay, don't wear masks. This disease is not real. You'll be fine. So this also pushes the delay of the end of the pandemic. And it also worsens its outcome. The other thing that happens is it also prevents the right information to go out there, right? So before we hit the few skills that will help you discern what is the right information from what is the wrong information and how do you know what to spread, we'll discuss a few common topics. So COVID-19 is one of the biggest topics that is hit by medical misinformation. You've heard things like hydroxychloroquine cures COVID, and this was spread by the President of the United States. So you can imagine somebody in the position of the President of the United States is not immune to medical misinformation. You have other popular medical topics that are affected by this. For example, cancer. So things like ginger is 10,000. I don't even know how they get these numbers, but ginger is 10,000 times more effective at killing cancer compared to chemo. You also have things like vaccines. Vaccines cause autism, and this is big. Like, people actually don't want any vaccines. And you can also see how this has impacted COVID-19 vaccinations. So these are the common topics that are affected by medical misinformation. So the idea I want to put out here today in front of all of you is an idea of conscious consumption. We should be people who consume information consciously. We should decide for ourselves what is right and what is not, and do our best to only spread the right information. Just like when a virus comes into your body, your immune system will first decide whether or not I should allow this foreign item access to my body. The same way we should work with our information. Whenever you receive something, before you press the send button, it should go through our brains, and we should decide what is correct from what is not correct. So this brings us to, how do we know what is right and what is not? So there's a couple of things that will tell you what is the correct information from what is not. And the first thing that will be quite clear will be the source. Most correct medical information will give you the source of that information. So if there is no source that is quoted, it's probably not credible. And you should think twice before you send that information out. So examples in our local setting, so you can see credible information will probably come from the Ministry of Health. So websites like moh.go.tz, you'll probably rely on that because that's medical information straight from the Ministry of Health. You have the WHO or the CDC. They will definitely do their best to give you the right information. If you have sources like The Citizen, Habari Leo, while they are good news sources, as far as medical misinformation goes, they can become targets of medical misinformation, and you should definitely double check the information you get from there. And then there are those sources which you'll definitely not trust. So if you see something that is from like therealpharmacy.com or onionnews.com, you'll definitely not trust something like that. So one of the things you should always ask yourself is, what is the source of this information that I'm spreading? The second thing, and this you will see that it is utilized so much to spread misinformation. It's that an expert said it, right? You'll always find a huge name, Dr. So-and-so, who is an expert in this field, said it. So why wouldn't we trust that expert, right? But do we even know that expert? Whenever we come across these big names, we don't even know these people. So how do we trust the name that we are given by these forwards when we don't even know that doctor personally? So over here, you first have to ask yourself, is this person even real? And the second thing you should ask yourself is that, is this person, while he is real, is he an expert in the field of this information? So for example, if you have a gynecologist talking about something that deals with pediatrics, while the gynecologist is an expert at women issues, he's not the best for child issues. So you should also check that, is this person qualified enough to give me an opinion in this particular field? So that's the second thing that we have to check for. And the third, which is quite the more obvious thing, is, did that person actually say what is quoted in that message? So here I have a couple of examples for you, right? If you get some information that you are told, okay, Professor Karim Manji has said it, right? So over here, how many of us know Professor Karim Manji? Almost all of us know Professor Karim Manji. So if you are told something is from Professor Karim Manji, you'll definitely be convinced that this is the correct information. As long as you can make sure it's from him and he has said it, you can trust that information. How about Professor Dr. William Howlett? And somebody tells you he's a professor of neurology in KCMC in Moshi. How many of us have heard about him? Very few of them. He was my teacher, right? So he is an actual person, and he's one of the best doctors that I know. So information from him would also probably be credible, but if you haven't heard about him, you definitely look him up first. How about Dr. Jamil Kadarbai, who is a gynecologist and head of department from the State University of Zanzibar? How many of us have heard of him? None of us? That's probably because he doesn't exist. That's made up, and that person does not exist. So this just shows you that people can quote names without them actually being professionals in the field. So this is quite clear, right? You get big names. You have the duty to make sure, is this person real? Have they actually said what's quoted to say have been said? And are they expert in this field to give me that opinion? So that's the other thing that we should always try and look for before we press the send button. The third one that also we should ask ourselves is, what's the motive behind this? Right? Whenever you do something, there's always an intention. So you always ask yourself before you press the send button, when I spread this message, what is the most likely outcome that will happen? And if your answer is along the lines of that it will go against conventional medicine, or that it will make people adopt this new cool research that is just found out, even though I'm not sure it really works, or to let people know that I'm the first person to share this new information. See, when you have motives like that out there, you should always double check and ask yourself, is this the correct information? And the final thing, which is the other cues that you'll get, is the language that is used. So most of the misinformation will come with more emotional tone, right? The correct information will be presented to you as facts. It will not contain an emotional back to that message. So whenever a message has an emotional language with hyperboles and exaggerations that this is the best cure out there, you see, you have to be cautious about messages like this. Or messages that promote you to share. Forward to all WhatsApp groups that you have. Send it right now. Save the lives of 100,000 people, right? And things like, I shared it because I care. Do you care enough to share? You see, there are all these messages that are pushing you to keep sending and forwarding these messages. So these type of messages, always double check them. Also, huge claims without insufficient evidence to back these claims up. Always double check information like this before you spread it. Okay, so after that we'll go through a couple of examples, and we'll go through our methodology to see where we stand with messages like this. So you have somebody called Dr. James Bolton. If he shares something like this saying, COVID vaccines contain dangerous chemicals like chlorogenic acid, anthocyanin, polyphenol, niacin, and leucine. Sounds so dangerous, right? COVID vaccines are so dangerous. But is that so? Let's use our methodology. What's the source over here? The source is Twitter, right? It's a personal account. Who's the expert? The expert is Dr. James Bolton. I've not heard of him. I don't know him personally. So I don't take that as a credible source. It's also not from a verified account. And the profile picture is of Sherlock Holmes. So all these are cues that tells you that, okay, this information might not be correct, right? And what's the message again? What's the motive here? The motive is promoting people to go against the conventional medicine and vaccines. So always double check messages like this before you forward them. So your methodology will always save you from spreading messages that are not correct. So always go through this methodology, and you'll find it saving you from spreading messages that are not correct. We'll go through another example. So this one, so before that, the chemicals that were there in the previous message, they are actually the contents of an apple. So just harmless, everyday consumed chemicals were quoted to just promote a message of hate and going against vaccines, right? Next, this is a quite common message. You see, we got it from Batulanti, who is in our WhatsApp group of our family, and she just forwarded it to the group with very good intentions, right? She wants everybody to be cured of cancer. So she sends a message from Dr. P.V. Gandagan, and they call him a saint with a stethoscope. And the message actually says, stop consuming sugar, because sugar is the source of all cancer, right? And it also says to use lime in water, and that will cure your cancers, right? And after that, there's also in the middle, you'll see that there's the use of virgin olive oil, consuming some teaspoons of this, and you'll be cured of cancer. You'll never have to face the disease of cancer. So we go through our methodology here again. What is the source? If you read the whole message, they mention Maryland College of Medicine over there, right? So that's their source of information. And the expert they are quoting here is Dr. P.V. Gandaran, right? And what's the message over here? What's the motive? The motive is going against the conventional medicine of chemotherapy, and it promotes alternative cures. However, as we say, there is not enough information in this message to convince you that there is evidence for these claims, right? So over here, that again should make you double check this message before you forward. And if you put this information with a quick Google search, this is what you'll get. So there's a paper, a news post from the Times of India. So the doctor they quoted, Dr. P.V. Gandaran, he's actually a real oncologist. And guess what? He actually filed a lawsuit against this message and the spread of this message in social media, because he found people using his name in the wrong way. He is an oncologist. He promotes chemotherapy because chemotherapy cures cancer and it saves lives, at least some of them, and that is the right thing. So you should always double check messages like that before you forward them. So finally, before I leave you, there's a fun game out there. It is made by the WHO. It is called Go Viral. You should go and play this game. It will actually expose you to quite a few common messages that are out there on medical misinformation, and it will equip you with more tools to discern what is correct medical information from what is not. And before we leave today, I want us all to pledge. A pledge to do our best. A pledge to check our messages. And a pledge to double check, triple check all medical misinformation before we press the send button. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shanabas, for that enlightenment. I also pledge that whatever I do is according to what you said. So, just to add on to what Dr. has said, so there's something known in coding which is known as GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you feed, whatever your input is whatever your output will be. So that brings us to a question that how do we actually set boundaries? How do we know what is right for us and what is not? What should we share, what we shouldn't? How do we know, how do we close a filter out there that whatever misinformation is there, it should stay away? And I only forward what is right for me and what would be actually great for the society. Also, I just received a message saying that there are cosmic rays coming in, so please all of you switch off your phones. Okay, so I guess all of you are actually listening. Great. So reminder, we've had our volunteers out there. If you have any questions, please take a paper and write the questions, and our panelists will be more than happy to answer your questions. So next is our religious aspect. So, Sheikh, we end up sharing misinformation with the intention of sawab. Do we actually get sawab, or are we actually digging our graves? Is there any particular agenda, and what is the religious aspect to it? Also, is ghibat part of wrong information, and how do we actually go against that? With that, I would like you to come forward and share your expertise.
That's a small request.
السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة
أعوذ
الله.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد. Whatever I had in my basket. So we have already discussed. Nothing is left. I should recite Quran and Fatiha. Let's see. The time is 9:30 already. So let's see. There are some discussions. So what is an Islamic perspective when you receive a message from someone? Are we allowed to share these messages without any criteria? Is there any criteria led by the Holy Quran and by the Masumin alayhi salatu wasalam? So this is what we are going to discuss tonight, inshallah, within 10-15 minutes. So the first slide says to post or not to post. Ready? Okay. To post or not to post. I received some message. Should I post it or not? So there are 6 different questions we will be discussing tonight. I should ask myself first, then I'll be able to post that message in different groups, or I'll be able to forward it to someone else. The first is, what is your intention? So can I use this?
You'll have to point there.
Okay, what is your intention? Number one, I'm trying to inform or educate someone. Is this your intention? Or are you trying to cause shock or anger? Or are you trying to draw attention to yourself? Simply, you are showing off, that's it. This is your intention. So that's what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are judged by the motives. What is your intention? Why are you sharing this message with someone? What is the intention? My intention, people should think about me, I'm so religious. On Friday morning we are getting messages, Jummah Mubarak, Jummah Mubarak, Jummah Mubarak. I receive a lot of messages, so sometimes there is some problem in that message. I call that person, Baba, there is some problem in that message. Have you read that message? He or she says, I haven't myself. It's party I'm distributing. It's going on. Islamically sound? Is your post adhering to basic Islamic social etiquettes, such as number 1, not using foul language, no garam gari. There's no foul language in that message. Number 2, no indecent images and clips. Sorry to say, there were some complaints that there are some people actually in group, they share some indecent clips and pictures. What Holy Quran says, if you see, you can't see. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, those who publicize these indecent messages, Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحِبُّونَ, certainly those who love أَن تَشِيعَ الْفَاحِشَةِ, that the immorality should be spread or publicized. فِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, among the believers. So the believers should see this immorality. Allah says, لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, for them there is a painful punishment, painful torment, فِي الدُّنْيَا, in this world, وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ, and in the hereafter as well. So before sending any message in a group or someone, I should check there should not be any indecent image or a clip. Not mocking others, not lying or backbiting. Backbiting, inshallah, we'll cover later, or if a question comes, I'll go in detail, inshallah. That's what brother has discussed. Last and the most important thing, that is your post acceptable within the Sharia? For example, you are sharing a clip of a lady without hijab. Or it is against our beliefs. It is against our beliefs. Someone has posted, for example, a shubha, a doubt among our community. So what I'm doing, I'm propagating that shubha among the community members. So he has done a chafu thing, so I'm the one who's propagating the chafu thing. Or, Maulana, I don't know that this message is against Islamic Sharia or against Islamic beliefs or not. I don't know about this. What should I do? The Holy Quran says, La taqfu ma laysa laka bihi ilm. Don't pursue, don't say that thing which you don't have knowledge about that thing. If you don't know, don't say. Inna sam'a wal basara wal fu'ada kullu ulaika kana anhu masula. On the day of judgment, eyesight, hearing, heart means intellect, all these things will be questionable on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment. One thing I would like to discuss this here, because La taqfu ma laysa laka bihi ilm. Ilm, in the Holy Quran, whenever the word ilm is used, it means certainty, 100%. If you don't know about anything 100%, you're not allowed to speak about that. You're not allowed to. In fiqh, there are levels of knowledge. The first level is 0% of knowledge. I don't know anything. This is called ignorance, jahalat, jahl. The second level is delusion, waham. Waham is from greater than 0% level of knowledge, less than 50%. If it is 50-50, it is shak. That's what we discussed, shakkiyat namaz. It's 50-50. If it is more than 50, less than 100, this is called zan. This is called zan, most probably, suspicion. If it is 100%, this is called yaqeen or ilm. Maulana, I don't have yaqeen or ilm. I have suspicion, most probably, more than 50%. Can I say something? The Holy Quran says, yani I have received a message from someone, but I'm not certain if it is correct or incorrect. I assume it's okay. I assume. Can I share it with others? The answer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hujurat, اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. O the believers, avoid much assumption. Assumption is not allowed. Do you have yaqeen? Go for yaqeen. Or if you don't know anything, فَاسْأَلُوا أَحْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Go and ask from those who know, if you don't know anything. So you cannot assume something and pass a comment. It is not allowed. Or for example, إِنَّ الظَّنَّ لَا يُغْنِ مِنَ الْحَقِّ شَيْئًا. Indeed, assumption is no substitute for the truth. It cannot substitute. The truth is there. While assuming it is like this, I can say anything, I can pass a comment about someone. A person is working. Should I give this example? Oh, I came to know this person has done this thing in Jamaat. The message is going on and on. Assumptions are going on. It is haram. It is haram. You are not allowed to do this thing. So you are a wakil, you are a judge, and you are doing everything on the social media. So this is not the right thing. We can discuss this later if the question comes. Hope this was the second. The third question I should ask myself, is it your business? Is it your business? Huh? Go to the next slide. See, you receive a news about an event or on the other side of the world or in your city. The first two questions you should ask yourself. If anything happens and a message comes to you and you want to forward it to someone else, my hands are on forward, huh? I cannot control. I forward this message and I read by myself. This is what I do. Fatiha, let's distribute. Because this is without cost. If WhatsApp is going to put charges on for forwarding a message, nobody is going to forward a message, I know. It's free of charge. The first question is this: is it really affecting me or my community? The first question. If the answer is no, it's not affecting me or my community. Question number two: can I play a part in solving that issue? Answer is no. Then you should say it's none of my business. Leave it. That's what Rasulullah says. Min husni islamil mar'i tarku ma la ya'nihi. That the part of the perfection of one's Islam is his leaving that which does not concern him. Leave it. It's none of your business. Why are you forwarding? I'm just forwarding, in Amazon jungle, a frog fell from the tree. Okay. What to do? There's a bombardment of information we are having nowadays. Wallahi, wallahi. The fourth question I should ask myself. Is it true? Is it really true? The message I received. So the shared information, I received a message that, for example, something happened in Karyako. I got the information. The first question you should ask, who is the person, who is that person who is bringing that news? How did the information get to me? What is the origin of that particular information? So the Holy Quran says, so this ayah we always discuss in principles of jurisprudence. In Usul al-Fiqh, we discuss this ayah. Because the Rawi, the narrators were narrating a hadith from Aimma alayhi salatu wassalam. There were some liars who were lying on Imam alayhi salatu wassalam. So the Holy Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So the boy who recited the verse, this is the verse he recited. O the believers, in ja'akum fasiqun. If a disobedient person, a fasiq comes to you with a khabar, with a news. So should I accept? Who is fasiq? Go and search in the Holy Quran. I don't have time. So otherwise there are different places where this fasiq has been mentioned in the Holy Quran. So if a disobedient, evil person, a person who has a vicious character, he comes to you with the news. Okay, so you got the message in your WhatsApp. Oh, so this person I know. This person is sharabi, for example. I know. He drinks alcohol, for example. So can I forward this message? So Allah says, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, investigate. Without investigation, you're not allowed to forward it to others. Why? The Holy Quran, after this, brings the illat, brings the reason why you're not allowed to share this news. أَن تُصِيبُ قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ, lest you harm a people out of ignorance and then become regretful for what you have done. So there is a whole shani nuzul behind this, what happened. But the thumb rule is this: whenever a fasiq person brings news to you, investigate. Without investigation, you are not allowed to share it with others. Hope. Next slide, please. Okay, I don't want to go in detail. Actually, if you see, you must have seen this picture, and Brother Hassan and Doctor, they have discussed a lot. So these two pictures. Hope. The next slide, the question, there are 6 questions you should ask before forwarding it to someone. The 5th question, is it really beneficial? Faido Cheya, nothing. I don't know Gujarati a lot, huh? So, is there any benefit or not? Hope. We see people say, Wallahi. We see people, does the world really need to know what you had for breakfast? I'm sharing my breakfast. Are you sharing it for yourself or for the benefit of others? So it goes back to the question number 1. You are sharing. So I was just searching some stupid selfies, wallahi, in front of the trains. What they were doing actually. We are just sharing. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and whoever believes in Allah and the day of judgment, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا, should speak what is good, أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, or keep silent. Don't speak, Baba. There is no need. Why are you speaking? Why are you sharing? Is there any benefit? There is no benefit in it. You're just sharing. You're free, huh? You're just sharing. The last question. Will it cause harm if it is said? The last question I should ask myself. That will it cause harm if it is said? Many a times. So there are some ticks on that. The source is correct, it's beneficial, everything. The news is good. Bad because of sharing this news, there will be huge fitna. There will be huge fitna. So better not to share that news. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam says, La taqul ma la ta'lam. Do not say which you don't know. Bal, rather, la taqul kulla ma ta'lam. Do not say everything which you know. There is no need. Khaja Abdullah Ansari, one of the Urafa, says, Juz rast nabayad guft, har rast nashayad guft. He says, nothing but the truth should be spoken, not all the truth needs to be spoken. There is no need, it's not beneficial. Be quiet. There is no need of sharing this message to each and every single individual. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ahsan Shaykhuna for that enlightening presentation. Moving on, as we know, a lot has been said and a lot has been discussed. We all would love to know from you any comments, any questions, any thoughts. Please give it forward as we're moving towards the question and answer session. So if you're having any questions, please ask the volunteers to give you some papers and you can move on with that. We'll be continuing this for 5 to 10 minutes, the question and answer session, and then we'll be closing it off for the day. Awesome.
Should I come to?
Yeah.
So there is a question. I see many messages on WhatsApp about Amal. Often after reciting various azkar, they ask you to go to sujood and say something like Ya Zainab Adrikni 100 times. Is this reliable and permissible? So the question is, for the authenticity, you should go and check if this particular amal is mentioned somewhere or not. Or for example, if you want to perform that amal, ulama says, okay, with the intention of rija, you can, rija matlubiyat, you can offer this amal. Rija matlubiyat, oh, maybe Allah wanted that amal. If it was desirable and asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will give me the sawab on the day of judgment. With rajai matlubiyat, you can offer this amal, this mission.
Shaykhuna, we have a question saying that sometimes we hear news and stories about institutions. What is the process we should follow before we spread news about the institution?
Okay, the best thing is this. That's what I discussed. I heard, because there are some political figures, institutions. So this person is in Jamaat. He has done some gotara. And mashallah, secretary is there from World Federation. We heard from this person and that person. And the thing is going on the WhatsApp and the social media. This is haram at all. You're not allowed to do that thing. Sometimes we are revealing the secret things of that person. Who has given you this authority to do that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Sattarul Uyub. You're not allowed to spread the defects of that person who nobody knows. Or you go and ask that person personally, or go to that institution. Go to that institution. Rather going, you become judge, you become wakil on the social media, because nobody can catch you. This is haram. Or for example, what you have spread, later on, if you come to know, so whatever the allegations I made, these were incorrect allegations, okay? So what can you do? So these are out. You cannot take your words back. It's like a bullet. Now it cannot come back. Be careful. So whenever you're saying anything, it is buhtan. I was reading some of the riwayat. It says that whoever puts a tuhmat on a mu'min, he comes out from the wilayat of Allah and enters into the wilayat of shaitan. Allah. So be careful. So the institutions are there. You can go and ask that institution, or you can go to the court if you really would like to. But you want to open a court on social media. This is incorrect.
One more question is that there's a lot of news.
So I'm the only one, huh?
Yeah. So far, this is the questions that are directed to you. So there's a lot of information on social media. So how do we keep a balance when ensuring that while we make sure we are spreading the correct news and the proper news, that we are not stifling free speech and different opinions?
Okay. For example, I will categorize the news into two different categories. Number one category is the news which is related to an incident. Khabar. That's what the Holy Quran says. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun bin naba'in. Naba is khabar. Fatabayyanu. So you have to check the source. If he's saying something has happened over there, so you have to check the source. But sometimes the news is only information. For example, it is about the healthcare, what Dr. Saab has discussed. So the Holy Quran says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you don't know, go and ask the experts. Other than that, for example, you want to say, or you want to crack a joke, okay, this is the free speech, you can do that. So these are the two things you should be very careful. When you are quoting an incident or passing an information which you do not have any idea, for example, about the healthcare. Other than that, there is no problem, you can share. For example, you want to share your life history, for example. You want to crack a joke. You want to tell the history of Dar es Salaam, for example. These are the things you can share, there is no issue. Okay? So you should be very careful. So when you are quoting, it should not end up in lying. You are not lying. Be careful. That's it.
So, Brother Haseen and Doctor, what are your views towards creating a balance?
It's a very good question, because balance is what would make us responsible consumers of information, but not only consumers, propagators. Because what we consume, first it affects us, because if we start believing in it, our thought processes change. We become believers before we become propagators. We then start sharing. We then become the advocates of that idea or those news or that information. So, if you are a keen consumer of information and you enjoy reading and learning and you want to do more of it, then you have to have a wider scope of reading, a wider scope of looking at information from different sources. So for instance, if you have my presentation, you can put up the last page. I've given you a list of links and a list of books that you can start looking at. For instance, there's an alternative media website called the Information Clearinghouse. They produce news from main sources which are not produced by CNN and Fox News. The source is by journalists, but CNN and Fox News will never publish it. These guys, they do. Right? Or for instance, books that are not promoted by big publishing houses. Right? For example, The International Jew is a book that was written by Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Automobiles, about how the influx of the Zionist entity in the US created the mess it has created. Yeah? Or for example, The Zionist Massacre by Harun Yahya, which talks about all the misinformation and disinformation around that topic. So you have to become a better reader, or if you can't read, then you can even watch. So for example, 9/11, Fahrenheit 9/11 is a documentary that's award-winning, that explores the whole issue of 9/11. So you just, if you like these things and you are somebody who talks about it, who's passionate about it, you have to become more well-informed before you share your opinion. Like Sheikh said, silence is most of the time better while you are gathering that information. But it's always good to know more if you are interested in it. And if you are not, then it's better not to share. And better not also to believe blindly. Because then your own psychology starts affecting the people around you, the people closest to you. And there is a psychological disease now that has been identified. It's called the information disorder. It's actually a disorder that has 3 stages, and it has a treatment plan that is taken by counselors and psychologists. So it's a big thing. So you have to be very, very, very conscious when you become part of that machinery of consuming and propagating what you come across.
Thank you for the beautiful question.
You can come here, or you can bring a chair here. Can you bring a chair here? This chair here.
Thank you for the beautiful question. Technology is working on my side. So thank you for the beautiful question. The one thing that I will cover is how to maintain a balance on the medical information side. So most of us will have come across alternative forms of medicine, right? Things that heal without the use of conventional medicine. How do you maintain that balance without demoting conventional medicine and actually promoting the right health benefits of alternative medicine? So the correct way to do that is just, number one, make sure what you're promoting actually works. So I'm not the expert in herbal medicine. I'm not the expert on alternative medicine. So when you do come across these alternative therapies, first step, just the way you would do it with medical therapies, check with the experts. It is an entirely different field on itself. So if you do find that a particular therapy is working on the side of alternative medicine, then you can definitely share it. You will have the backup from the experts in the relevant field, and you will be able to promote it without any harm. That is one. But at the same time, you should make sure that you're not causing any harm. As Sheikh said, do not cause any harm. When you're promoting your alternative medicine, do not say that, okay, use this, but never go to chemotherapy. See? You have to draw that line. You have to draw your balance where you are promoting the benefits without actually removing the benefits of an alternative therapy. So make sure you do draw that. It's a very fine line, and many times you end up picking one side over the other, but at the same time you can, I believe you can promote one side without demoting the other side. And there are definitely benefits. You will find something like turmeric, hardar, we've been using that forever, right? These days you'll actually find tablet forms of curcumin, right? That because medical technology did advance and it is recognized to have its benefits. So you will be able to promote one without demoting the other, and each side has its benefits. Just make sure you check with the relevant experts before you spread any information.
So just a final question to Sheikh Imran. This question again back to you. So we're having messages that are religious and right and have the true information also. Then can we spread it? And also, there have been times while people take parts clip of a scholar or any speaker speaking and spread it out. Please help create awareness for the harm it creates.
Okay. So the sixth question I should ask myself, I have discussed all this in detail. So before forwarding this message, so the clip and the first one was?
The first one was true information, right?
Yeah, if the information is true, it is beneficial. All the six questions, there is a tick on that, you can share that information, there is no problem in that. But if any one of the criteria is not fulfilled, then better, for example, it's not beneficial. Okay, information is correct, but it's not beneficial. Leave that information. Or the part of the clip. If because of sharing that part of the clip, I'm associating a lie with that person, then it is haram. I can't. Okay, I can't. One thing actually, so this is the last question or this is the last question? Okay, so I'll end up with a story, a short story. So many a times actually the question was, there are some public figures and they come up and there are some allegations. See, please, always try to look the other side of the story as well. Please, we are hearing from one person and we make our mind. In 1950s, it happened. Okay, there was a captain of a ship, and it was oil ship. He was carrying oil in that ship. What happened? All of a sudden, he went and took the ship towards the rock and hit the ship with the rock, and the ship sank. The owner of that ship filed a case against that captain and asked him that what happened? That you went, were you blind? You went and hit the ship with the rock. He said that, Baba, what happened? You don't know. All of a sudden, I saw water fountain or waterfall coming from sky. And on the ship, all of a sudden I saw from the sky a buffalo hit on the deck of the ship. And I lost the control of that ship and I went and hit the rock. All of them said, Baba, he has become Gando. They literally took him to the mental hospital. For 18 years, he was there in the mental hospital, and Bicharo, he became mental in that hospital, really. Okay, if I ask all of you, what will you say? Okay, the reason what the captain is bringing, is it correct, or what do you feel? How do you say? How do you feel? In the middle of the river, a buffalo is coming from the sky and hitting the deck of the ship. Huh? It's not possible, huh? Gandache, he's saying. That's what they said. After 20 years, what happened? There was a pilot. Pilot wrote a book. Said there was, in a jungle, it's an article I wrote actually. I read, it was written by a scholar. So he says that a pilot, he wrote that book. In that book he says that there was fire 20 years back. So I was collecting water through the helicopter. So when I was collecting water and extinguishing the fire of the jungle, so when I collected water, so I felt in the bucket there is something. I felt, hey, there is buffalo, and the buffalo is jumping, and the helicopter was going out of control. So what I did, I emptied the bucket. I saw it really went and hit the deck of the ship, which was there in the middle of the river. Now you tell me. The story's changed. That is what it happens actually. Many a times we hear from one person and we are not listening to the other person. That's what the Holy Quran says about Hazrat Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam. So in your judgments, when you are passing a judgment about one person, you should not be in a hurry. Listen to the other person as well. So we are putting allegations and allegations and allegations. Baba, give him some time and let him defend himself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a very enlightening story. I guess a lot has been said and a lot has been said towards you. I hope you all have received it and are ready to actually work on it. Thank you so much, the panelists, to actually be with us today and share information. Other than that, Brother, how much should you please say?
Ahsan and Jazakallah to all the panelists, Sheikh, Dr. Shanibas and Brother Haseen. Ahsan. In front of you is a QR code. This QR code is actually a feedback. So it's a form by a development society. If you fill this form, this will help us make future events in which we could do many more events, something like this, but in different aspects. And after that's done, I would like the ladies to go ahead and use the auditorium door, while the men just wait for 5 minutes as the ladies exit. I just received a message that there's chai mandazi, so if you could please just verify that. I don't want to spread misinformation. Overall, thank you and Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Shaykh Hassan, thank you so much for that line.
Sorry, man, go so late.
Salam. Mehdi. Thank you so much. Are you coming?